Entering the 5th round, the Broncos had 3 picks to work with. Picks 152, 162, and 179 overall. The Broncos continued to add depth to the secondary early in the 5th round, as with the 152nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos selected Delarrin Turner-Yell, defensive back out of Oklahoma. He was the 2nd Oklahoma defender taken by the Broncos in the 2022 draft, along with edge rusher Nick Benito in the 2nd round. Delarrin enters the league at the age of 22 after 4 seasons at Oklahoma. Unfortunately, injuries have been a recurring issue as he never made it through a complete season in college. After missing the first half of his freshman season, Delarrin returned to the lineup for the Sooners in a reserve role at strong safety. While he did make it through the entirety of the regular season in his sophomore campaign, he ended up missing the Sooners' playoff game against the eventual college football champion LSU Tigers. In 2019, Delarrin recorded 75 total tackles, 5.5 TFLs, 3 PBUs, and 1 forced fumble. In 2020, Delarrin played in 10 out of the Sooners' 11 games in their pandemic-shortened season. He recorded a very respectable 52 total tackles, along with his first career interception to boot. He opted to return to Oklahoma for his senior season in 2021 and was able to build on his momentum from his junior season. He once again recorded 52 total tackles, along with 3 TFLs and a career-high 3 interceptions. Unfortunately, Delarrin's health was still an issue as he missed 4 games in 2021 with a hamstring injury. Delarrin's role in Denver is something that is going to need to be questioned. His small size makes me concerned about him being a full-time box safety at the NFL level, as he would likely get routinely washed out in the run game. Maybe you could try him at nickel, but I am not so sure that that is the right role either, as he really struggles in man coverage against bigger receivers, and he almost doesn't stand a chance if you line up an athletic tight end such as George Kittle, Darren Waller, or Travis Kelce against him in man coverage. Delarrin does make some nice plays in zone coverage as a free safety, so he could look to provide some depth there, but obviously our starting free safety is one of the best in the game in Justin Simmons. At this point, as a defender at least, Delarrin is a jack-of-all-trades, master of none. And not saying that is a bad thing, as he can be used in a variety of ways, but eventually he is going to have to refine his play to a point where he can focus in on one position and master it. One way that Delarrin can see the field as a rookie is on special teams, and I have to imagine that is what the Broncos had in mind when they elected to use an early 5th round pick on him. The Broncos are looking to completely retool their special teams unit under new coordinator Dwayne Stukes, and going into the draft, they were hoping to add some players who could make an impact on special teams, a unit that was statistically amongst the bottom tier of the NFL in almost every major category. Overall, I would grade this selection a very solid B. I feel this was mostly a move to bolster the special teams unit, but Delarrin Turner-Yell should also provide some nice safety depth for us in the event that Kareem Jackson and/or Justin Simmons were to miss time. The Broncos also clearly had special teams in mind with their next selection, as with the 162nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos selected Montrell Washington, wide receiver / return specialist out of Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. Washington spent 5 seasons at Samford. He really began to come into his own in his redshirt junior season. Offensively, Washington recorded 27 receptions for 406 yards and 4 touchdowns in 7 games for Samford in 2020. He also returned 18 punts for 200 yards and an additional touchdown. In his final collegiate season, Washington broke out. Offensively, he caught 60 passes for 813 yards and a whopping 9 touchdowns. In the return game, Washington returned 46 kickoffs and punts combined for an average of over 21 yards per return, as well as 3 additional touchdowns. In 2021, Washington was named to the first team All-Southern Conference team as a return specialist and was named to the second team as a wide receiver. Washington is a dynamic speed threat who is dangerous in open space when he touches the football. Although he does not figure to see the field very much offensively, he is still a nice insurance policy for fellow speedy wide receiver KJ Hamler, who is recovering from a torn ACL. That being said, this draft pick was all about solving our woes at return specialist. Deontay Spencer had been our primary return specialist since 2018, but he certainly was not a world beater at that position. He was serviceable, and that's about it. The Broncos clearly wanted to upgrade at return specialist, and they felt that Montrell Washington would provide a high-level impact in the return game. That is the only way you can justify using a 5th-round selection on Montrell Washington. Overall, I would give this grade a C. It is still to be determined if Montrell Washington will be a significant enough upgrade at return specialist to justify drafting him this high. He does not figure to make an immediate impact on offense, and something that is becoming a bit of a theme with this draft class, I feel that the Broncos passed on players who could have made a more immediate impact on a football team that is trying to win right now, including running back Ty Chandler and edge rusher Kingsley Enagbare. The Broncos actually had another chance to get Enagbare, and they passed on him once more. With the 3rd and final pick in the 5th round, they had a player that they were clearly targeting, but they were worried that he wouldn't make it to them at pick 179. So they decided to trade up to the 171st pick with the Green Bay Packers, giving Green Bay the 179th and 234th pick in return. And with the 171st pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos selected Luke Wattenberg, center out of the University of Washington. This was easily my least favorite move that the Broncos made in the draft. On paper, it makes some sense, but when you begin to peel back the layers, this pick seems like quite a bit of a reach. Wattenberg spent 6 seasons at UW. After redshirting the 2016 season, Wattenberg started 5 games at left tackle for the Huskies in 2017. He was then moved inside to the left guard position for the following 2 seasons before finally settling in at the center position in his redshirt senior season in 2020. Unfortunately, UW's season was shortened to only 4 games due to the pandemic, so Wattenberg, like many others in this draft class, took advantage of his extra year of eligibility and returned to Washington for a 6th season, where he started all 12 games at center. Despite Wattenberg's lengthy college career, there is serious concern about his game translating to the NFL level. He greatly lacks play strength, and it is quite apparent when you watch him play. Although he does move well for someone who is 6'5" and 300 pounds, he really struggles against bigger defenders and will get absolutely mauled in the run game. Things aren't much better for him as a pass protector either. Based on the scouting reports that I have read, there was a consensus ranking from late round pick to undrafted free agent for Wattenberg, and on paper at least, trading up in the 5th round to get him seems like a bit of an overdraft. This new Broncos regime clearly has some doubts about Lloyd Cushenberry as the team's long-term starting center. Although Graham Glasgow has played center before in his career, from what I have heard, Russell Wilson prefers his centers on the smaller side, not only so he can see over them at just 5'11", but also because there can be issues with under center snaps when you have a larger center and a smaller quarterback. As much as the Broncos need to bring in competition for Lloyd Cushenberry, I feel that reaching on a player of Luke Wattenberg's caliber is a bit of a questionable move. So based on the information that I have to work with now, I'm gonna have to give this pick a D. Once again, we left more talented players on the board in my opinion. With the 179th pick that we sent to Green Bay, they ended up selecting Kingsley Enagbare. Hopefully Wattenberg proves me wrong and he becomes our long-term starting center, but until he can prove that he can make it in the big leagues, I have strong doubts about this pick.